Hello, everyone. Another exciting version of Chip Talks podcast. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about the science behind cannabinoids. So we're going to dive into the endocannabinoid system a little deeper, but we're going to talk about how the endocannabinoid system works at a much deeper level. Okay. And so, anyone who hears that I speak and teach on this all the time, so I know how you guys think. So, and usually anyone who hears the word endocannabinoid system is going to go right to cannabis, right? So they're going to go right to, oh, well, you're just Chip, you're trying to sell me some kind of cannabis thing or some kind of CBD product or something. You're not talking to me about a real thing. You're talking to me about some made up system that the, hippies made up to sell marijuana. It's like, no, that is so not the case. In fact, the endocannabinoid system is common to most life on the planet. If you have a cat, your cat has an endocannabinoid system. If you have a dog, your dog has an endocannabinoid system. If you have a lizard, if you have a fish, anything with a spine has a very robust endocannabinoid system. And in fact, if you drill this down to the cellular level, we're all just a collection of cells, all of those things. And most of those things I just mentioned are a collection of eukaryotic cells. Eukaryotic cells all have very robust endocannabinoid systems. So anything that has a eukaryotic cell in it is going to have a endocannabinoid system. And even further than that, anything with a mitochondria will have somewhat of an endocannabinoid system. Mitochondria express the CB1 neuroreceptor. So this endocannabinoid system is about way more than marijuana and cannabis. It's about how you work. It's literally your master regulatory system. And that term was coined by a researcher named Ethan Russo. Dr. Russo is the one that did all the work for GW Pharmaceuticals to build Epidiolex and Sativex over in the UK. So he, early in research, he termed a coin master regulatory system. And it certainly is looking like this endocannabinoid system, which is common to most life on the planet, is our master regulatory system. So you must ask yourself, where's pharma? I mean, this is our master regulatory. It regulates my endorphin system. It regulates my central nervous system. It regulates my feeding and craving. It regulates my nutritional intake. It regulates my mind and how I think. I would think it might be a pretty attractive target. But for whatever reason, it's not. And I'll leave that to the reader so you guys can speculate all you want about why that's the case. But for me, as a lay researcher, let's say, doing what I do, it's an extraordinarily attractive target. And the really cool thing is we can impact it by nature. Okay. So your dog, is not a marijuana, imbiber, right? So how does your dog feed this system? Well, this is the important part of kind of the education. So as unsexy as this is, we're going to talk about marijuana and cannabis and how it impacts the endocannabinoid system at the end of this. At the first of this, we're going to talk about the system and how it works, even if you've never seen marijuana, and how it works in your dog and how it works in, all life. Okay. So let's start there. All right. And again, this is pretty unsexy, but this is fact. And you need to know this because it's super important in your diet, in your everyday behavior, and the things that you're, putting in your mouth and how often you're eating. So, this is important stuff. And it's all of this stuff that we're talking about now in this kind of health revolution that we're going through. So like we're kind of waking up and going, maybe over there isn't so good. And maybe we got a little arrogant over there. And maybe we need to rethink all this. Well, those of us that are kind of doing that, right? This endocannabinoid system is just, it's explainable. It's logical. If you're 3 years old, I can teach this to you, right? So it's explainable. It's logical. But the best thing about it is you can impact it with nature. And certainly we impact it with food, as your dog does, as your fish does, as your butterfly does. Okay. So we impact this with food. So we have this system inside of us called the endocannabinoid system. How do we feed it? How do we normally and naturally feed it? So what are the sources of cannabinoids? All right. Yeah, again, this gets a little unsexy, but this is super important to talk about because none of you guys are eating these things right now. So omega-3 fatty acids, and omega-3 fatty acids are a type of polyunsaturated fat, as this says. But the biggest thing about this, and I want you to really see this, is that since the human body can't produce omega-3s, these fats are referred to as essential fats, meaning that you have to get them from your diet. Your body can't make omega-3 fatty acids. You have to put omega-3 fatty acids in your mouth. And we'll talk about how these turn into endocannabinoids in a second, but I just want to go through these types of fats because fats are where endocannabinoids are built. So I want to go through the types of fats first, and then we'll go through kind of how endocannabinoids get built from these fats. But again, this is cool because guess what? Just by eating more omega-3s, you can adjust this side of your endocannabinoid system. So if I just feed you chia seeds, it's going to help this side of the endocannabinoid system. So omega-3s are a part of the requirements for the endocannabinoid system. And we'll talk about the cannabinoid or the endocannabinoids you build from those in a second. It's confusing, all these terms, isn't it? We'll talk about those in a second too. So omega-3s, omega-6s are also essential, meaning that you have to eat them. You have to obtain them from diet. Your body can't make them. And omega-6s make one of your major endocannabinoids. And then omega-9 fatty acids. So these are things, monounsaturated fats. Again, your body will somewhat kind of reclaim and remake these. So they're not as essential as the omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, but they are very important, and they're very important in your endocannabinoid system. In fact, these are the guys that if you're not eating omega-9 fatty acids, you will never feel full. Your satiety molecule is built from basically these fats, okay? So it's important that we eat them. All right, so now I want to talk a little bit about arachidonic acid. So your main endocannabinoid inside of you that's built from these dietary fats is something called anandamide. But anandamide is in this kind of situation with arachidonic acid. So there's this whole arachidonic acid is converted into anandamide. Anandamide is then broken down into something by Fa and is reconverted back to arachidonic acid. So there's this loop that goes around with arachidonic acid. But that loop is competitive, right? So there's a lot of things vying for arachidonic acid to try to build your main endocannabinoid from it that's called anandamide. So anandamide is our main endocannabinoid, and he's built from omega-6 fats, and in particular, arachidonic acid. Okay, and that's what this is basically saying. So anandamide is built from arachidonic acid. So the endocannabinoids anandamide, AEA, and 2-arachidonic acid, which is kind of the other side of the equation, 2-AG, are arachidonic acid derivatives that are known to regulate human cardiovascular function, along with a bunch of other stuff. So just all that to kind of substantiate what I'm telling you. So this is a super important thing because, again, omega-3s build a lot of very important endocannabinoids, and in particular, these guys, right? So these guys actually down here. Sorry, I need to have all this pre-texted out. I want to be somewhat spontaneous in what I'm telling you. So these guys are the main guys, but you can pull this paper if you want. I'll put it in the link. But you have a bunch, let's say, of endocannabinoids that are built from omega-3 fatty acids. I would challenge you to say, where are you getting your omega-3 fatty acids right now? And if you don't know, then you're likely not eating them. And if you're not eating them, you aren't building these guys. EPA dopamine sounds pretty important, as does DHA dopamine, as does EPA serotonin, as does DHA serotonin, as does DHA, as does EPA, as does ALA. So all these guys are super important inside of us, and they're major, major molecules in how you're trying to run your body. So if you're not eating omega-3, and you hear me talk all the time about omega-3 and omega-6, like, Chip, shut up about omega-3 and omega-6. This is why I talk so much about it. Because if you're not eating omega-3s, you're neglecting this whole side of your master regulatory system. And I would argue that that's not a very good thing to do. So again, you build lots of you build lots of endocannabinoids from omega-3 fatty acids. You also build endocannabinoids from olive oil, from the stuff that's in olive oil called oleic acid. And in particular, you build something called OEA. He's oleoethanolamine, I believe is the way that you say him, but OEA. And he is your satiety molecule. Oleamide, you can also think of as your satiety molecule. Oh, well, here he is right here, oleoethanolamide. So he's your satiety molecule, and he's the guy that tells you when you're full. So oleic acid helps build basically the molecule that will tell you that you're full. Right now, we've got some extenuating circumstances, let's say in between these processes, some bugs, if you will. And that's why a lot of us suffer from obesity, is the bugs basically hijack our ability to build this satiety molecule from oleic acid, which is really cool. And that's a whole nother show that we'll, talk about at another time. But important thing here is that endocannabinoids come from dietary fats. Okay. So when your dog is feeding his endocannabinoid system, he's feeding it with dietary fats. If you only feed your dog meat, you're only feeding him saturated fat. Your dog needs the same chemical mediators that we need. So he needs, or she needs omega-3, omega-6, and omega-9 fatty acids in order to build all the endocannabinoids that we need to run us. Okay, so here's how it gets really confusing and stuff. What is an endocannabinoid? Let's define that. So an endocannabinoid is something that your body makes. Your body makes endocannabinoids from dietary fats, okay? So those are endocannabinoids as far as definition. Cannabinoids, and this is what makes it confusing as all get out, cannabinoids come from marijuana, come from the marijuana plant. And phytocannabinoids come from other plants that will mimic your normal cannabinoids. So the purpose of understanding and kind of discovering and messing with cannabinoids and with phytocannabinoids is so that we can manipulate the endocannabinoid system by mimicking cannabinoids. That's confusing as all get out, isn't it? So endocannabinoids are inside of you. Without the endo, the cannabinoids come from the marijuana plant, and phytocannabinoids come from things like kava or black pepper, or, there's a lot of sources of phytocannabinoids, let's say. Okay, so those are the classifications of things. Well, inside your body, you've got these neuroreceptors, okay? And so all of this stuff, these cannabinoids and endocannabinoids and phytocannabinoids, matter because they have action at these neuroreceptors. Okay. So these neuroreceptors, and there's a bunch of them, so I won't get real complicated with them. Again, CB1 and CB2 are what most of us understand. So we'll talk about those, and we'll kind of talk about what those do and then what impacts those. There's a bunch of other ones. So GPR119 is something that participates in how you produce GLP-1, which is helps you feel full. It's the thing that Ozempic is trying to do, right? GPR55 is one. GPR120 is one. There's a whole bunch of endocannabinoid receptors, okay? All 9 of these things that you build from omega-3 fatty acids go to different places, like in your brain mainly, and they'll hit different receptor systems, but mainly they're playing in the endocannabinoid system. So, but CB1 and CB2 are the most important and, let's say, most expressed. Yeah, I guess I could say that. Always want to be scientifically accurate. Are the most expressed receptors in our body. So CB1s are kind of our control surface, right? So it's, we're a vehicle, we work like a vehicle. And so CB1s kind of provide control surface. And it's really cool how your body works. Like at certain times of the day, it's kind of time to do things. And like in your stomach, it appears that at 10 a.m. around 2 p.m. And it's due to the sun. So it's all about the sun. It's called Zeitbringer 3 and Zeitbringer 9. So around Zeitbringer 3, around Zeitbringer 9, you'll begin to express CB1 neuroreceptors in your gut. This is what we experiences hunger right now. When you really get hungry, you get hungry in your throat. But the stuff that we feel right now is this expression of these CB1 neuroreceptors. And all it's kind of saying is it's a good time to eat, right? But when you need control, you have to have two things. You have to have CB1 neuroreceptors expressed, and then you have to have kind of anandamide floating around to be able to manipulate those receptors and be able to activate those receptors. It's just engineering, right? So the more spark plugs and that stuff you have in an engine, the more control you're going to have over it, the more control over speed, the more surface area, in anything that you have, you're going to need control surfaces to be able to control that. And so you're just a giant, huge control area, control surface. So you need a lot of CB1 neuroreceptors expressed. Now, this appears to work almost backwards than how most scientists think about it. And again, I likely think backwards, so this is why I'm kind of rocking and rolling in here. But most scientists really don't consider this. But when you look at neuroreceptors and action, so if you're looking at CB1 and engineering, you always have certain levels of anandamide expressed, and anandamide is let's say the key that fits in that lock, right? But you don't always have CB1 neuroreceptors expressed. So they'll kind of express as you need them. They'll express at certain times a day, but they're variable. So it appears that it isn't the expression of anandamide as a ligand, it's more the expression of the neuroreceptors that kind of controls things. But anyway, that's just a aside and an FYI. So CB1 is our control surface. So if you're wanting to do work in your body, you're going to need a CB1 receptor to talk to with anandamide, and then you're going to kind of initiate things from there. So your endocannabinoid system will sit at top of function. You have a biofield that kind of sits above that, but your endocannabinoid system is top of function for us in kind of human function, let's say. And so all other processes are kind of driven down and through the endocannabinoid system. So even if you're doing something minor at a cellular level, you're likely pinging back up here, into some kind of control surface. So CB1 is control surface. CB2, what's the most important function of your vehicle? You could say energy, you might argue a lot of things, but I would say you got to defend yourself. I mean, you're not going to stay alive if you can't defend yourself. And defending yourself is almost more important, than you're producing energy, right? So it's, if you're dead, it doesn't matter if you produce energy or not. So defending yourself is super important. And as we've evolved, let's say up from lower life forms, we've developed a very robust immune system. And I mean, our immune system is robust. There is a lot to it. It's complicated. It's got two sides. It's got a kind of an innate killer side, and then it's got an adaptive kind of healer side. And, all that's very important and very critical when you're trying to defend yourself against, COVID or staph or, MRSA or, H. pylori or hook around with pinworms. So it's super important that you have a lot more, let's say, control and a lot more variable control in your immune system. And that's why you have another receptor, and he's called CB2. And so he's mainly performs in your immune system. He's mainly all about helping you with immune response and helping you defend yourself. He does have other functions, but for the most part, that's what he does. Okay, so now we know we've got all these effectors out here, right? So you've got internal effectors that you build from dietary fats. And this is why fats are so important, though, in our diet and why we need to pay attention to fat. Most of you guys will say, well, I eat meat, I eat chicken, pork, I eat different kinds of meat. I get plenty of fat. You get plenty of saturated fat. You get none of the other fats that I just discussed. You're not getting any omega-3 from beef. However, you would if that beef ate omega-3. Okay. So, and this is a way that we can alter our food sources. And there's lots of studies and research. So if you feed hemp to a cow, that cow's meat will contain omega-3 fatty acids. And those, as you eat that meat, those omega-3 fatty acids will be transferred to you. Okay. So, but it's super important that we pay attention to the types of fats that we eat. It is the most important thing that you put in your mouth. It feeds your master regulatory system. It is also your gasoline. And we just, I get fat from meat. No, So we all need to be more conscious of this. And there's, if you go to our website, True Medics or Neighborly Wellness, there's tons of, I talk about this all the time. If you guys haven't heard me talk about this, then you've been missing out. So I talk a lot about omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. But the reason for that is because it fuels all this stuff in your master regulatory system. If you're not eating it, you're going to fail. And how do you mainly fail? You'll fail at CB2. You'll fail in your immune system. You'll become an opportunistic host for pathogens. Yummy, yummy. Let's have me some chip, right? So we don't want that. We don't want your shields down. And your shields go down if you're not eating omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids in proper ratio and omega-9 fatty acids. All of you get plenty of omega-6 fatty acids. Don't up that at all. Omega-3s is what we need to up, and omega-9s. Okay, so that's how you normally feed the system. Well, let's say if we look at, let's say every single one of us right now, we all eat more omega-6s than omega-3s. So is there a strategy to kind of offset that? Let's say can I supplement into that using the endocannabinoid system and knowledge of that? Yeah. CBDs, THC to a certain degree. Again, phytocannabinoids, which come from other plants. So if you begin to look at black pepper, that's supplementing the CB2 side of your endocannabinoid system. Black cumin is supplementing CB2. Anything with beta-caryophyllene in it is supplementing the CB2 side of your endocannabinoid system. And there's so many foods with beta-caryophyllene in them. It's amazing. So lots of things in nature impact, let's say, the immune side of our endocannabinoid system. When you get to the control surface side, there's a lot of things that help us regulate that side in nature. So CBD would be one thing. So CBD is something called a FAW inhibitor. So it plays around with this recycling of anandamide and arachidonic acid and all that. And so it basically will give you access to more anandamide. So it kicks up your ability to use CB1. But it's hard to find CB1 effectors in nature. And I'm going to talk about THC in a second and why it's so critical, as far as a drug development, as far as manipulating the system, as far as all kinds of things, right? But there are other sources of CB1 effectors in nature. Just most of them aren't as psychoactive as THC. So if I give it to you, you'll go, oh, well, it doesn't feel like THC, so it's not affecting my CB1 neuroreceptor. And things do; they're just not psychoactive. So there's some stuff in kava. So if any of you guys are kava fans, there's a molecule in kava called yanganin. And yanganin is a CB1 effector. And there's other things in nature. You guys can, it's kind of fun to find them, but there's not that many. There's tons of CB2 effectors in nature. And there are lots of FAW, inhibitors in nature that will affect the CB1 side of things. So lots of stuff in nature, but let's go to cannabis now. So the way that you work naturally in this endocannabinoid system has nothing to do with cannabis. It's fed with dietary fats. You manage it with dietary fats, and you can supplement with other plants, right? So anything with beta-caryophyllene in it's going to supplement CB2, some CB1 effectors in nature. So plants will enhance this system, and almost every plant has some kind of endocannabinoid action or lesser action that's not poisonous, let's say. So certainly medicinal plants, if you look those up, you'll see what actions they have in the endocannabinoid system. Okay, so that's nature. That's the way that you're built to live in the wild. We feed this system with dietary fats. We supplement it with this other stuff from nature, but it's absolutely a natural driven system, okay? And this is what's so cool to practitioners like me, because I can get in the middle of this with all kinds of plants. And if I have knowledge, I have there's way more power and safety even than pharma, okay? So hopefully you're getting that, and hopefully you're understanding that. So now let's look at cannabis, though, and let's look at how cannabis affects the endocannabinoid system. So cannabis has things in it called cannabinoids, right? And most of us are familiar with THC. So THC is a cannabinoid. CBD is a cannabinoid. THC and CBD are really not natural molecules in the cannabis plant, that they come from the acidic sources of those called THCA and CBDA. It turns out THCA and CBDA all come from a master molecule called CBGA. Okay, so all cannabinoids come from CBGA. Just like all, and it's the same process. These are like steroids and hormones, just like all your steroids and hormones come from cholesterol. Okay, so in cannabis, it's kind of master cholesterol, if you will, although it's not cholesterol, it doesn't work that way. Stigmasterol is the thing in plants, but your master molecule, let's say for all the cannabinoids, is CBGA. But all these guys are in acidic form in the plant, and it turns out that medically, the acidic forms are more pharmacologically active. They're not psychoactive, so they're not going to, let's say, make you feel high, but that medicinally, pharmacologically, they are more active, which is awesome. So when you look at medicinally using cannabis, raw, juicing it raw, raw plants, super good, super healthy. Now, if you have a particular condition, and this is where we get into more pharmaceuticals, really, a pharmacist would tell you that this is the way that they think. So let's say you have someone who's super depressed. And again, why are they depressed? Likely because they're disbalanced omega-3, omega-6. It's messed up their gut biome, and they're kind of stuck. That's the why. And likely it's pathogenic in some reason. But again, if you want to get in the middle of that and immediately try to correct that, one way to do that is THC. So THC will help a depressive. THC will not help someone who's real anxious. It'll make them way worse. But someone who's Eeyore, right? Oh, it's another day. I guess the sun might come up, it might not. And, people who are depressive, right? Very low affect, depressive. So THC, it helps those people a lot. It changes their life, honestly. So THC is a very good individual supplement for certain things. And it's a very powerful impactor of our CB1 neuroreceptor. So it's a way to kind of get in the middle of anandamide CB1, let's say, action. So I can kick up, let's say, the abilities of certain things by using THC. Now, THC also has this is a big secret. So don't tell anybody. Oh, it looks like we're having some kind of Facebook difficulty. So, sorry, Facebook, you don't get this secret. You're going to have to go to YouTube for this one, or Buzzsprout. So this is kind of a secret, but pharmacologically active things. Oh, well, okay. Well, I won't tell that secret. I guess I'm not supposed to. So we'll come back to that another time. But anyway, so you've got lots of things that will impact your CB1 and CB2 neuroreceptors in nature. I'll tell you. So, THC is a really interesting thing. So inside of your body, when your body is hitting a CB1 neuroreceptor and it's trying to, let's say, send a signal out to do something, the way that it impacts your CB1 neuroreceptor is different than how THC affects your CB1 neuroreceptor. THC is very cellular specific. So you don't create a lot of cascade when you're using THC. You create a lot of very individual cell specific action. When you're using your native thing that's built again from omega-6 fatty acid called anandamide, you create these signal cascades. So when you're signaling, when I hit one cell, I hit a bunch of them. But with THC, I kind of got to go cell by cell by cell, which is useful. When you look at drug development, things like that, that's extraordinarily impactful and useful. So THC will directly impact the CB1 neuroreceptor, and that's very powerful. If you want to look at what impacts CB2, again, lots of things in nature. And again, your native ligand there is something called 2-AG, 2-arachidonyl. And again, he's an arachnidonic or arachidonic acid derivative that comes from omega-6 fatty acid. So you have a natural way to run this system. You do that every day. You do that by how you eat. You do that by the things that you put in your mouth. And we all need to get way, way, way more intentional about that stuff. Most human problems come from, ourselves, right? So we kind of put the gun to our own head and pull the trigger by our diet. So we need to get a lot more conscious about our diet because it feeds this endocannabinoid system, which is our master regulators. We're pretty conscious about the type of gas we put in our car. I mean, I'm not going to go put a bunch of, sugary gas in my car because it's easier. I'm going to go, I'm going to likely shop for the best price. but I'm going to find the best, let's say price quality thing that I can find to put gas in my car. None of us do that with our food right now. Not one of us. And we all kind of need to get better about that. Okay. So where's this headed? Well, gosh, if I knew everything about my vehicle that's sitting out there in the parking lot, and I could optimize every aspect of that vehicle, I'd have one badass vehicle. Well, that's what I'm telling you that we can do as we learn this stuff, as we begin to research further, deeper. We can begin to further understand this vehicle, and we can optimize this vehicle. And we're so far from that now. I mean, we're in the toilet. We're as much in the sewer and the muck as we possibly can be. And we're, naive and ignorant and kind of in the dark. So hopefully I'm giving you guys a little bit of flashlight, because we need to get out of that. And we need to get out of that for our own good, for our kids' good. There's so much upside in what you are and who you are. Some of it's woohoo, watch some other chip talks, but there's so much upside in our, let's say, human potential and human function. In our arrogance as men, we think we've figured this all out, and we so haven't. There's so much cool stuff that's going to be coming. But anyway, it won't come unless people like you kind of join me on this journey. Help us, promote us, buy our product. That's the best way you can kind of help us, but also amplify when I'm telling you. Go figure, surely Chip's telling me wrong stuff. Strip the bark off of it. Prove me wrong. Stand on my shoulders, develop stuff that I'm not doing. That's what we need to do. We all need to do this, and we all need to do this for the benefit of man, not for the benefit of our pocketbook. Okay. So there you go. More about the endocannabinoid system. We'll continue this deep dive. And again, if you wanted a deeper dive on 0306 and that balance, I've done a lot of videos about that. So just go out to Chip Talks podcast. If you're interested in product that impacts all this. So again, I'm a product formulator. I know how all this works. And so our products are, let's say, an advanced natural product. They are reported to have very high efficacy, meaning they work as we say that they'll work. We have we have a new product that's at weight loss that's pretty spectacular right now. And I think we can say that it helps with weight loss. So anyway, go check us out at True Medics and see what we do. And we'll see you back next week for another and like and follow. I know I got to say all that kind of stuff. I'm horrible at promoting myself. So like and follow, share this stuff, do all the stuff that those folks say. But anyway, see you guys next week. We'll be back with another exciting version of Chip Talks podcast. See you guys. Bye.